know what she said, she might just change your life.
And we are joined this morning by Andrea Seidel, who is, besides being a registered nutritionist and certified life coach, you're also a positive psychology practitioner. Good morning.
Good morning.
And you have written a book because you've recently undergone something and you're trying to sort of help other people navigate. So why don't you tell us?
So exactly that. I went through a separation divorce. It's actually been 5 years ago. However, my children, I didn't want them to negatively be affected by the whole situation of my separation. And so I actually hand wrote a little book full of affirmations that I could read with them. And I just read it to them every night to help them stay positive. And yeah, so it was a book full of affirmations that I wrote. And then later I realized that a lot of people would also benefit from it. And my daughter loved it. She would repeat the affirmations. And it really, I felt like it was helping them. So it was all about, you know, my parents live in separate homes and I am okay. And it's all just to keep them feeling positive and also to remind the parent that the children are also going through a lot. So the separation isn't just about the parent. So I felt like this book needed to be created. So I had it published, and it took 5 years to get there, but it's so cute because now my kids are like, that's the last book that they want to read because we've gone through it so many times, yeah.
Well, it's called My Parents Are Separated and I Am Whole. So how did you, when you're talking to your children about these positive affirmations, what are they asking you? What are the questions that they want answered?
I don't think they specifically asked me like specific questions. I think what it was more is I could tell they were hurt that, you know, my son at the time, he was 8, my daughter 3, so she really didn't understand it as much as my 8-year-old. And I think my 8-year-old kind of was upset, like, why are the two people that I love so much no longer together? And that always really made me feel almost guilty as a mother, a parent. And so I think that I really wanted to do something to remind him that even though his parents are now separated and they live in separate homes and they're not together, we both love them very much. And they're supported by many people, not only their two parents, but also their friends, their grandparents, and there's a lot of support around them. So I think this kind of was a tool that I could use to help my kids kind of cope through what could be a challenging situation for them.
Now, your children are in an age group where they must go to school with lots of other children in the same situation, right? I mean, I think
very true.
50 years ago it was a rarity to have children, their parents are divorced, but now it's like every, kids are discussing, so what's the difference between a stepbrother and a half-brother? I mean, they're trying to figure out the logistics of the new blended whatever.
Right.
So I think there is a commonality for children today that there maybe wasn't before. You're
so right, and it's something crazy, like more than 50% of marriages are now ending in divorce, and many of those marriages are affecting children. There are children involved, and I feel like sometimes they're not in the forefront, and the parents that are going through the separation forget that the kids are also going through a degree of separation. So to your point, yes, like there's so many kids. I know my daughter came home one time. She goes, "Oh, I met a friend, and her parents are separated as well." So it's almost, you're right. It's sad that it's become the norm, but it's also, I think that a lot of people are adapting this more positive approach and making things more amicable and tolerable for the children, which is great.
So Andrea, do you really? I mean, I think that children don't feel like they're the exception. But I'm not sure that more people are making it amicable. Because when I talk to my friends in the legal profession, when I talk to friends who are psychiatrists or therapists, I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing that people, the children very often become pawns. People just get blinded by anger, by hurt, by pain, and the kids are pawns.
you hit the nail on the head, and that's why it often breaks my heart. And I remember there was one moment, and I won't get personal, but there was one moment through my separation where I felt like the kids were getting involved. And so I had to have a very strong conversation because I did not want my kids to be negatively affected by the whole separation. So the conversation was just simply that, you know what, they are not, the separation is our choice. They're not at fault. And there's actually a page in the book that says the decisions of others may affect me, but I'm not at fault. So it's exactly, you're right, like it is definitely affecting so many children, and they're getting involved in adult information that they really do not need or it won't help in any way. They love their father, they love their mother. They don't like hearing their mother talk badly about their father. They don't like hearing their father talk badly about their mother. It's very hurtful and psychologically damaging for children.
Well, I mean, Kate, your parents got divorced. I did not go through that, and some of the feelings are, you really have to be proactive, I think, as a parent to make sure that they don't have lifelong.
I think it's impossible.
Effects.
I mean, honestly, I think it's impossible to go through a divorce and not affect your children, or not have it negatively affect your children. I think
for the
it's
rest of their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still affected by it now. And my parents I was 8, and my parents were very
Amicable?
very amicable, very supportive. They immediately went to other events. Well, then they moved to opposite ends of the world. One to Canada, one to Australia, but that was after 4 years, and I would go backwards and forwards. I got a lot of air miles. But they, they're all there. I mean, my at our wedding, I think somebody making a speech asked my parents to stand up, and it was like my parents stood up, and then their spouses like, do we stand up to finally got, oh yeah, you guys raised me, you all stand up. So they did. So I mean, yeah, and anytime my father is visiting, there's always a big family dinner and everyone's there.
And your mother comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And my stepfather comes, and my stepmother is unfortunately has died. But honestly, I felt very lonely, very abandoned, very low self-esteem all my life, and it all traces back to that. And I no matter what people say, unless it's violence or some form of emotional abuse, certainly when the children are younger, I think you should do everything you can just to stay together, even if you're living with a line down the house, down the center of the house.
So,
Except for, go ahead.
That's a really great point. I do believe that it definitely does affect children profoundly. I do believe, though, and that is one of the reasons I wrote this, we can do everything we can as parents, but they're going to be affected. 100%, and you can't pretend that it's not happening, and you can't. The thing is I stayed in a marriage probably 5 years longer than I should have, just because of my children and because I was trying to make it work, and I'm an optimist, and I tried to, it's got to get better, it's going to get better, but unfortunately there comes a time where you do realize that, you know what?
Yeah, you need to go, and I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I stayed 15 years longer than I should have, or more.
Yeah.
But some people say that they waited until their children were older, late teens, early 20s, off to college, and then they did it. And the repercussions were huge, and then they wished that they had done it when they were younger. So
and then
I
also
don't know.
role model, right? So
I don't know if there's ever a good time.
And that's one thing I did learn through my process personally. But also, and the thing is that children are smart. They're smart, so they can tell if the parents are not getting along, not sleeping in the same room, not having dinners together, or they're upset with each other, or kids love seeing positive role models in their lives. So if their parents are mimicking a healthy relationship, then that's what they're learning. Like, you don't want your son to role model poor behavior, nor your daughter to see what bad male behavior could be, right? So there's a really fine line. Like, you really want to, look at all the options and stay in it, not just throw in the towel easily. And that's why I wrote Cloudy with a Chance of Separation, because I was feeling like a lot of people do, to your point, just throw in their towel and say, that's it. You know what? I don't like the way you brush your teeth, and leave the toothpaste in the sink. And then they're ready for a divorce. So I do believe that a lot of people end marriages prematurely without investigating all their needs, all their, even looking at ways that they can get their needs met. Perhaps, they need lots of affection. That's a huge need for them, but they haven't communicated it and requested it. So there's a lot of tools that people can use to try and get their, get their needs met that they're not perhaps looking at. So I do believe that when there are children involved, that there is a huge process, and that it's people do leave marriages, hopefully, once they've investigated all their options and they've tried their best and tried everything they can to make the marriage successful for the kids' sake.
Okay, we're going to take a break here at What She Said on SiriusXM 167. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Andrea Seidel, and we're going to find out exactly what positive psychology is, and she's a life balance motivator as well, so we're going to figure all that stuff out so we can just be better people. Stay with us. Christine Bentley and Kate Wheeler are with you in studio today, and with us we have Andrea Seidel, who is a registered nutritionist and certified life coach and a positive psychology coach and life balance motivator. That is a very long title, Andrea. And she has just written a book. Is this your fourth? Because you have exercise and fitness book, right?
Mission Slim Possible.
Mission Slim Possible, which we talked to you about before. And then Cloudy with a Chance of Separation. And now the follow-up, which is My Parents Are Separated and I Am Whole, which is obviously aimed at young children. And your daughter did the illustrations.
Well, she colored. She helped
colored
with
them.
Yes.
I was going to say, she's very advanced.
She's very good.
If she drew them. And she colored them and mainly inside the lines, because, staying inside the lines is not necessary anymore. They've changed that. So what is your key message that you want to get out to children?
To children, my key message to children would be that they are loved, and that even though they're going through a stressful time and their parents are separating, that they're supported by so many people around them, and just generally that, life can be good and filled with new possibilities, even though there's changes happening, and that also they're okay with emotions and things like that, and that they can feel hurt and express that lovingly to their parents and be supported and cared for. So that is the premise of the book. But it's funny because when you read it, it actually gives a message to the parent. So it almost reminds the parent that they need to be supporting and listening and giving their children the respect that they deserve.
Well, I think one of the things that happens a lot, according to people that I talk to, and it's very topical at Christmas, let's say, coming up, or the holidays, whatever faith you belong to. There are holidays coming up where the children are used as pawns, and that's very, very detrimental, I think, psychologically to kids, emotionally to kids, to be pulled into, to have to make a choice, or,
yes.
They don't want to make a choice.
So it's up to the parent to make it a positive situation. So this, and to not discuss details with the children, to first speak in a very business manner with your separated person that you're with, so your ex-husband or whatever it is. You want to have a good, clear conversation away from the kids and establish what's going to happen around these holidays so that they don't feel the confusion. And then that way you can approach your children in a positive way and say, okay, well, on Christmas Eve, we're going to go to Grandpa and Grandma's house. We'll have a nice Christmas there. On Christmas morning, this year, you're going to be with Mommy, and Santa will come. It'll be awesome. And then at 12 o'clock, you're going to go to your daddy's, and you'll have a whole nother Christmas. So it can be put in a very positive light. And then you'll see your other Grandpa and Grandma. So you're going to have lots of Christmases.
But it's the conversation before that with the
That's
spouse.
Right.
And I have talked to people who have said people who were fighting and were in court, and it was bitter. And then when Christmas started to come, or somebody's birthday, or an occasion where the child was going to have to, where there was a tug of war,
Yes.
and they said, you know what, I can't do this. I mean, it's just going to, my children are going to be so upset. I'm going to be the big one here, and I'm going to say, okay, when would you like to have them, and I'll work around you. And they said once they started that, then the other person then next time reciprocated and said, I know your mother's coming in from out of town, and I know it's my weekend, but you know what? Why don't we switch weekends? Because I know that they would like to see your mother. So
Exactly.
once you start that giving in a little,
And being
not
fair.
getting your feet in being fair, but being magnanimous a little,
Right.
it can start a whole cycle where you say, look, it's the kids that matter. It's not about us.
That's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head, and if everyone took that approach, it would be fantastic. And that is a positive approach. It's like open dialogue. It's being fair. It's being
tough.
interactive.
It's tough to do for a lot of people.
It is, but at the same time, you have to remember 100% it's for the kids. So it's not about the husband and the wife or the ex-husband, the ex-wife. It's all about the children, and that's what it needs to. They need to come first, and it's not about ego. It's not about if someone wasn't faithful in the relationship and they're trying to get back at them or whatever the reasons are. It's about the children, and it's almost like. My ex and I, we talk like business partners, and it's always about the children, and that's how we've been amicable, and we just keep that business tone, and the second it gets a little emotional, we just move it back into emails.
Yeah, but have you both initiated where you've given in on something? Yeah, it's my weekend,
course.
but this is something's going on here, so it's
Exactly.
okay if they go to you. You know?
Yeah, and there are times where that is difficult to do, but at the same time, I would rather have him ask me to watch the kids on a weekend that's his so-called his weekend. He's going away on a bike trip or something. I'm happy that he feels that he can ask me to watch the children, because I'd rather them stay with me anyway than, disrupt their schedule and things like that. So it's true, but that's taken 5 years to get where we are with the children. So it may not happen right away, but that's exactly what you want to work towards, to try and keep things as optimistic and positive as possible.
We are speaking with Andrea Seidel about her latest book, My Parents Are Separated and I Am Whole, right here on SiriusXM, channel 167. Now, Andrea, explain what positive psychology is all about.
So what positive psychology is all about is focusing on strengths and empowering people so that they can be in situations that they know what their strengths are, they know, and they're connected to what they value and what's really, really important to them, and so that they can get their needs met in an effective, positive way. So sometimes when we go into therapy or we are going into counseling, we look at the past and we focus on that a long time, and sometimes when you put your energy in that space, it brings you back to the moments, or if you bring if I bring myself back to everything that happened to me during my separation and divorce, it was very emotional, and I could pull myself there and be there often. So the idea with positive psychology is, yes, you've been through that, but what can we learn from those situations? So kind of knowing what you've gone through and looking at them and feeling the emotion and being there, but also learning from it, and how can I come out how did I come out stronger? How can I use those as positive things so that I can move forward in a strong way and create action plans moving forward? So positive psychology is all about just taking the approach of looking for strengths and kind of your enlightened principles, and kind of using positive affirmations or positive statements to empower yourself so that you can move forward in the best way possible.
I was going to ask, could you give us a really quick example?
So in terms of conversation, let's use a really simple one. Say my son leaves his shoes in the front hall, and I trip over them over and over again, right? And I could get really frustrated, and I could be very negative, say, Damien, put your shoes away, right? So that could be an approach that I would take. In a positive psychology manner, I recognize and I think about the other person involved, in addition to knowing what my needs are. So the shoes are on the floor. So I go up to Damien and I'll say, so I could react in that negative way, or I could say, Damien, I use an observation always first. I notice you leave your shoes in the middle of the mat right by the door when I walk in, and I've been tripping over them lately. So my need for safety and organization in the house, so those are two needs, organization and safety. There could be other needs, order, whatever your needs are. My need for safety and organization in the house are not being met. So mommy's request is that, can you please put your shoes on the shelf or put them in the closet so that everybody in the house is safe. Just like you keep your room absolutely beautifully clean, can you also work on your shoes? So it took a lot of effort, and that's a really long conversation, but it comes out smoother and quicker usually. But it's just changing your dialogue to a positive approach is a really effective way that helps a nonviolent environment, and it also helps empower him so that he's like, oh, okay, no problem, I see that's important for you, and it gets my needs met at the same time.
I'm terrible because I can't help but think of Saturday Night Live, Al Franken, Stuart Smalley, and, how did it go? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
Yeah.
That's his daily affirmation.
That's funny. It's true. It's good.
He would do it. But, I mean, really, if you say these things to you really believe that they can change? I mean, I can't imagine, waking up every morning and saying to myself, I know what my husband says in the shower. He talks to the soap and he says, let's go make some effing money.
That's daily. That's
his daily affirmation. He's doing well, too.
See?
Maybe it works.
Well, what happens is, okay, I know it sounds like it's way out there and it sounds kind of crazy. Yeah, exactly. So let me give you an analogy that will maybe make it a little more receivable. Is that a word? Yeah. So, so when you first learned how to drive standard,
yes,
right, somebody had to tell you exactly what to do. So they had to tell your conscious mind. So they said, okay, put the gear, put it in the clutch, put it into gear, slowly let off the clutch and give it a little bit of gas, and you know the process. So you had to have them tell you consciously what to do, and you were thinking consciously how to do it. So then maybe I came and saw you like 2 weeks later, and you're driving your standard car and you're not even thinking about it. You're pulling up onto streets, you're going onto the highway, you're pulling off, you're gearing down, and you're even thinking about maybe what you're going to eat for dinner that night. So your subconscious mind started driving that car, not your conscious mind. So sometimes what we need to do in order to program our subconscious mind is make conscious statements to program our subconscious mind to make it more of a reality for ourselves. So if you say, for example, I choose to eat healthy whole foods, or I'm eating healthy whole foods, or I have a body like an athlete, right, or something like that, and then you want to see, you're more likely to make those choices the more you program your subconscious mind when you're in the kitchen. Now I gotta say though, if it's unreal and your subconscious rejects it, if it's like some obscure, like, I'm the sexiest person alive, or whatever your statement is.
Well, that's true.
And if you don't believe it, your subconscious is smart enough that it's going to reject it. So affirmations are simply tools that you can use that help on a conscious level program that subconscious mind. So in essence, when you're in your everyday life, you feel stronger, you feel more powerful, more in line with what it is that you desire. But they do have to be believable messages. So if you don't believe it, I always say someone with my weight loss clients is they'll say I'm nice and I'm super slim, or I'm fit and slim, and they don't believe and they kind of laugh. I say I'm in the process of getting slimmer, eating well, and just adding that is more receptive. Yeah.
Okay, so tell everyone how they can get your books and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so my books are at all bookstores, and if they're not there, they can actually order them in. It's on my website as well. And
what's your website?
It's AndreaSeidel.com.
That's SEYDEL.
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you in.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.